Academics. Yo, Mako, yeah. I wanna ask, a little less complicated question, and I'm sure you'll be
Yeah, thank
super
you.
elaborate on this one. So you're a quite impressive person, I've been really, really excited talking to you. So I just want to know, right? What is your personal philosophy? What standards do you set to yourself? How do you achieve goals? What is motivation? All of this stuff, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one, and that's something I've been asking myself quite a bit lately. I think the past 3 years after I peeled off from architecture, um, I became very what's it called? Like very hermit, right? I spent time with myself, and was really focused on my intellectual development.
Mm.
Am I popping in and out?
No, no, no. Keep going. Keep going.
Your screens were kind of okay. Um, so yeah, I was very focused on my intellectual development and was trying to find ways of moving barriers to that out of the way. So one thing that I started doing regularly was like running, right? I found that physical activity um, really helped to bake in difficult information to like process. So after doing a good amount of studying, or after working up a good amount of stress, or before a big interview, big test, a big presentation, I would always go for a run. It released stress, it cleared my mind, and it helped bake in a lot of the things that I tried to remember. And it also lined up this general state of mind that I found very useful across the board, which is like that feeling of being frustrated and fed up is a barrier to get through in and of itself, or an obstacle to get past in and of itself. Like it's an indicator that you're going in the right direction. You just need to push a little bit more. Like when you're on
Mm.
your run, right? Once you've had a couple of really good runs, you know, when you've cheated yourself out of one, right? Like if you
Yeah.
don't go quite hard enough, you'll come back home and you don't like have that feeling that of just being almost refreshed. It'll still feel good, but it's not quite there. Similarly,
Yeah.
doing practice problems out of a textbook, right? It's like I'll know if I've done enough, because there reaches a point where I grow frustrated, and there's a similar state of mind. I mean, one is physical exertion and the other is an intellectual one, but
Yeah, exactly.
it's that
Exactly.
persistence of like pushing through that for some reason mentally is very, very similar. And I found practicing that in as many areas of my life as possible uh, to be great at moving forward in that goal. However, um, something that I've come to appreciate a little bit more is um, not always being so on, right? Because that, I mean, and it's almost paradoxical, because in order to push yourself constantly, you need to remind yourself to push yourself. And it's difficult to turn that off and to turn it back on. It's easier to turn on and just
Yeah.
leave it on, right?
Yeah.
But it's good to turn it off at times so that you could allow, like, I mean, there's the whole like being happy component, right? That's always a great thing. But I think also just in terms of like trying to progress yourself forward, giving yourself the space to tap into your subconscious is vital, and that's super difficult to do, right? You can't at will bridge into your subconscious. So um, having free time is really one of those moments, right? There's a reason that a lot of revelations happen when you're in the shower, or when you're on a walk, or when you're on a run, or when you're getting groceries, right? It's there. There are so many more. Since you studied computer science, you might appreciate this kind of language, right? There's almost like a parallel processing that's happening in the subconscious, right? You have
Yeah.
multiple lines of thinking, of processing, that are happening simultaneously in your subconscious, where in your conscious mind, there's typically only one track. It's the thing that you're focusing on in that moment, right? And so being able to, like, say, program certain streams of the subconscious, right, just by maybe writing down, right? I love writing. I think by vocalizing an idea, that helps as well. Thinking about it, I think that's where prayer actually is really interesting. I'm not a religious person, but I think prayer has a lot to do with speaking to that unknown part of yourself that we can call God, right? The subconscious almost is like this God. It's this unknown entity that controls you.
Exactly.
You, like, program it by just repeating this idea, and over time, like in showers, when you're lounging on the couch, like your subconscious will just like spit something back at you, and you're like, whoa, that's actually that's great. That really helps to answer some of the questions I've been asking. I've been trying to write down my dreams more because of that. So yeah, I don't know, man. A lot of the things that I do are focused on, like, trying to make myself better, but there's always a question mark as to, like, whether or not you're doing it properly and if there's the right balance, right? Something like a goal of mine is to be able to spend an hour just sweeping out front, right? Sweeping the front door, and to enjoy it completely and not be distracted by other tasks. Not think about what I'm doing later in the day, and just enjoy the fact that I've made the front porch or front door or driveway or whatever it is that you're sweeping look a little bit better. And that's it. Right? I get very restless. So, yeah, being a little calmer, I guess, is the next thing for me to work on.
Huh. Interesting. Do you meditate?
Not enough. I do it on and off. I'll, I find meditation in the morning to be really pleasant.
Exactly.
Usually I need to do it after, like, a light workout, otherwise I'll fall back asleep. But it's fantastic to do, especially if you have, like, a nice window so you could look outside. One form of meditation that I've actually really enjoyed is, you start by focusing on your breathing, and that's kind of you're purposefully homing in your realm of consciousness to something that's very simple, so that you can kind of block out other things. But doing that too deliberately, I've found, is not like that can kind of help in the short term, but if you try to meditate for a little bit longer, like more than a few seconds, really, right? Then that deliberate effort to, like, focus on one particular thing is almost egging on other thoughts to start flooding your mind. And so you start thinking about these other things, and then you kind of feel bad for the fact that you start thinking about these things, and you're like, oh, I can't concentrate. What's wrong with me today? So if instead, like, I start focusing on my breathing, and then I think about my breathing and the sounds that I hear, and then I allow the thoughts to come through, I also let them pass, right? You hear that in, like, meditation apps all the time. That's kind of the thing. But then I like to open my eyes, right? And then this is where I know whether or not I'm, like, actually in a place that I like to be meditating. I don't know if it's proper meditation, but you look at the world around you and you see the visual field, and instead of identifying objects, you just see it as color and shadow, right? There's just kind of these blobs of things that come into existence. Maybe it helps to blur your vision a little bit, but you're just appreciating the full scope of consciousness and observation, and that's it. And the ability to stay in that state is, like, difficult. It's usually pretty fleeting, but that's why I bring up the window,